Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. This is another episode of the Online Hustle. Today, as you can see on the screen, that way, just next to me, we have Rob Hahn, who is the COO of Pattern. Rob, without further ado, I'm not going to go into too much detail on who you are and what you are. I'll leave that up to you. So take it away.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be here. I've been in the e-commerce space my whole career. I started at Amazon. I was 8 years at Amazon. I started as an intern in the warehouse space. It was really quite, I'd say I worked hard, but I got very lucky. A lot of people took bets on me early in my career. I entered the robotics space for Amazon early on, opened one of the first robotics fulfillment centers in Wisconsin, and it was just a really cool time. We didn't know what we were doing. We had a lot to figure out still in integrating robotics into the Amazon world, and so it's just a really cool time to be there. But I ended up leading large Amazon robotics fulfillment centers and big teams and huge volume. It's a very cool time to be at Amazon, because when I started there were like 8 fulfillment centers and now there's hundreds of them. So I got to be there during like just the crazy growth, the hockey stick growth of Amazon during that time. It was a really cool time to be there. Super hard, really difficult. I was one in small business. I never actually thought I would be at a big company. Amazon at that time was actually not as big. I mean, today it's the behemoth, but it wasn't at the time. It was a much smaller company, and we got to just solve really hard problems nobody cared what my degree was in or where I went to school or who my dad was. It was just a really cool time to be able to like run as fast as you could, and that's what they valued. So it was awesome. Amazon got really big. 2018, I joined a really small startup called Whitebox. So I was the COO there for 4 years. I led tech, product, and operations, and we built some really cool stuff. So we built a 3PL. We also built like an ad agency on Amazon. I talk that every company needs to be great at selling stuff and moving stuff. And sometimes moving stuff's the hardest part. And so they were pretty good at selling stuff. And I was like, hey, let's expand this. So it was pretty early on still in the Amazon 3P ecosystem, honestly. It sounds kind of crazy to think about, but this is 7-8 years ago now. And a lot has changed in those 7-8 years. But we were able to build something pretty valuable over 4 years. The fulfillment business that I built was sold off to UPS. I joined Pattern just over 3 years ago, and today I lead global operations. So if it's a thing that needs to happen, my team does it. So I lead a global team. We're an accelerator. Pattern is we're like the biggest, kind of the OG of the accelerator space. Not an aggregator. We don't buy companies. We partner with companies that have great products and that need help, kind of exploding to the next steps, right? So I have a great product, I have a great team, but generally I have a great product and a great team are not the same humans that also can be e-commerce operators. So we're really good e-commerce operators that end up being kind of a thin layer of e-commerce. We're a middleman. So we're low margin, lots of volume, but we connect brands to marketplaces around the world, and we make it easy. It's kind of the easy button for e-commerce. We're an extension of their team, and true partners is what we're trying to chase. So I lead anything from the algorithms around what we buy and how do we move around the world, all the way through the tech that runs our warehouses, designing the hardware that goes into our warehouses, that entire process. So I've been in the e-commerce space my entire. I know I look like 15, but I've been doing this for a long time. One of those blessed and cursed situations. But I've been in the e-commerce space my whole career and been super fortunate to be able to be around some super smart people solving really big problems. So that's me.
I was going to say, you look younger than what I do. So whatever it is, whatever the skincare routine is, like, you need to drop that in the comments when this goes live. But just going back to the sort of the origin story behind you and behind Pattern.
Yeah.
What was there like a light bulb moment when you went, oh, there's a real opportunity here? Or was there something like within the industry that you saw and you thought there's a gap here that we need to definitely capitalize on?
I think originally, when I was at Amazon, I got to spend a ton of time in the inbound space. I became one of the people really focused on how do we, I helped design, how the first piece of inbound automation worked at Amazon, which was a really cool time because it's just like building something. I like building. That's what kind of makes me tick. And so I was there, and as time went on, we were building more and more requirements. Like if you send something into FBA, for example, into Amazon, I was like part of that team that was like, hey, what are the requirements? One of the first, how do we figure out how to bring in stuff and keep track of it and everything else? So I was in the inbound space, and I realized we were pushing more and more complexity toward sellers and toward brands. And I was like, you know what? If you look in history, there's all these industries that continue to grow. There's an ecosystem that lives outside of them that reduces friction into that, right? You can see that in the automotive industry, like with people generating parts and and manufacturing. So I really thought that this is a hard problem. I actually tried to become a seller on Amazon right as I was leaving Amazon. And I was like, man, this is actually super hard to do. It's just really complex. And so I thought that means that there's probably opportunity for people. So that was like the first initial shift for me, was out of that more corporate environment in the big Amazon world to like, hey, I think that there's a real problem that brands need to solve, and Amazon's not going to solve it. They're going to continue to solve their problems. That's not even a knock on Amazon. Like, they should solve their problems, right? But brands need to solve it, and Amazon's not going to be the answer for everything. So that was really, for me, I just thought there was a big opportunity where brands are not going to be the operators to figure out how to navigate that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think alongside that, people get very... it's difficult for people to see kind of like the unglamorous truth behind where you are now. People see the IPO and how successful Pattern is now, but there's a backstory to that probably doesn't get any of the attention. So can you give us some examples where there was like hard lessons that you had to learn whilst first establishing and scaling Pattern?
Yeah, I mean, nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect, right? Like, this is even when you look at big companies like an Amazon. This is one of my favorite things when I talk to people. Are like, oh, I figured Amazon did that thing on purpose even. Like, well, actually, probably not. There's like 1,000 teams that are focused on different things. And like, that's probably not an intentional outcome. I think that happens in every company, especially as you're growing and trying to chase big problems. I mean, that happens definitely at Pattern. Like, when we're building, it's not all I make so many mistakes. I make so many mistakes. I'm making so many decisions on a daily basis that if I'm not making mistakes, I'm not actually making impactful decisions. Mm-hmm. And so I think so many things, I've spent a lot of time at this company, at other companies, wearing a vest, being on concrete, throwing boxes around, like trying, figure out problems. And like, the fun thing about building your own software, it sounds pretty glamorous to be like, we built all of our own software. They're like, wow, that's actually super impressive. I actually think it is really impressive. It's hard to do. It also breaks, and you can't call up somebody and blame them. It's like you. It's like, oh, we screwed that up. I screwed that up. Like, I designed that wrong. I didn't, whatever that would be. And so it's that is the unglamorous part. If you're gonna take all of the like accolades around it going really well, you have to also look at yourself and be able to say, hey, there's a ton of stuff we've done wrong and we need to improve on. So I think it's easy to look in and be like, oh my gosh, they have everything figured out. And I think we do have more than most, but there is so much more to figure out, and we've got a long way to go still. So the unglamorous truth is we're wrong all the time. Like, I think that's really, we're just wrong, hopefully less than other people.
Right, okay. Yeah, all right, good. Well, also within that, I think there's like, if you're doing things, air quotes, right all the time, then, you're never met with any challenges. And then with those challenges, they're often the things that make you course correct and then figure out where you should actually be going in the end. And I know earlier on you mentioned about when you left Amazon, you were looking to then start selling on Amazon yourself. So I suppose keeping that in mind, where do you think that most brands fail on e-commerce? Is it mostly strategy, or is it execution, data, leadership mindset? What do you think is the thing that most brands tend to get wrong?
I think brands, I kind of said this a little bit earlier, and I think this is where I would double down on this, is most brands and people that develop and build brands are really good. It's easier to know if you have a good product or a bad product. Or like in today's world, maybe it was harder back in the retail space. You're like, oh, I need to launch it, and we'll see what sales happen. Like 30 years ago, that's a different thing. Now you're like, You put that on, it sells or it doesn't sell, and then you get reviews. People are brutal in reviews, right? You know if you have a good product or not. So the feedback loop around the content or the whatever that would be, the actual product itself even is much faster than traditionally. And so what that means is I think people are building better products and they're building faster products. Where brands struggle, honestly, are all the operational pieces. That's where we see people struggle. And not just like warehouse operations. That's not what I mean. I don't mean all supply chain. I just mean e-commerce is far more complex than you're going to be in selling in a retail environment. It just takes a different muscle. And when people try to copy and paste that into that environment, it just doesn't work really well. We see brands struggle with that, either starting out or really, really big brands that are trying to stretch into e-commerce that are traditionally retail. They really struggle with how do I set myself up to be successful in this new world? So it's really all the operational execution stuff. Like you could win and lose on Amazon based on the size of your product being like a quarter inch bigger, right? Like because the FBA fees could be significantly higher and then you have no margin. Like the details are so incredibly hard to get right. And so I think building products, I think is more accessible than ever. With a global environment, I think getting that product operationally, what's the content look like? What's the bullet points? How does the thing move? What's the supply chain? How is it e-commerce optimized from a packaging standpoint? All of those things are where I see brands fail the most.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that about even just the size of the product as well, because kind of in the same vein, but not identically the same. We had Patrick O'Neill from Zesty Paws on recently, and he was talking about how they managed to really establish themselves and become more popular just by changing the color of the packaging. So obviously on Amazon's buy box, with there being a white background, they just changed the packaging color to orange, and that pop really made it something that people gravitated towards, because the rest of the products on the market were all like blacks and grays and whites. So even something as small as that, just changing the color of the packaging, can really set you aside from all your other competitors in the market as well.
Totally. And I say this all the time, like people aren't on Amazon or e-commerce in general. This doesn't matter if it's Shopify or Amazon or Walmart or Coupon, whatever that is, any marketplace, they're not buying products, they're buying pictures of products, which is like, it's a completely different game, right? Like you don't get to pick it up and hold it. So you're literally buying a picture of a thing, which then you hope matches the expectation. It's a completely different problem than you have in traditional retail. It just doesn't translate. And that goes to packaging, that goes to the content, that goes to what information they have in front of them. It is a totally different game.
So you keep mentioning content there. So let's dig into that a little bit more with Pattern specifically now. So you guys run that PXM Patterns experience management. So, and obviously that's a huge part of your differentiation. So in plain language, what does that mean and what does it do for brands?
Yeah, one of the hardest things that brands have to do is when you think about, if you're on one marketplace, it's much simpler to be like, okay, here's the content for this marketplace. It needs to look like this. It needs to feel like this. It needs to be within these requirements, for example. Amazon might have different requirements than Walmart on what the picture can look like or how many you can have or whatever that might be. So got this like, how do I optimize my content and how do I, and my content, my integration, etc. And how do I like optimize it, but how do I make sure it's compliant, right? So you've got these two things that kind of need to happen all the time. And it is an increasingly complex environment as you move beyond just one platform, either your own Shopify or whatever that might be. So there's a pretty big need in the market that we're filling to try to solve both of those problems. So having one repository, basically, to have all of your information, this is catalog information, this is all of your products, and then being able to, in one central place, push up to those marketplaces, be able to be compliant and optimize it for that specific marketplace is something that we built the foundation of and we're continuing to add to all of the time. And that's the basic concept. How do you keep everything in one place? How do you stay compliant? How do you optimize? The other part that's cool is we've got so much data and information we're pulling on like millions and millions of products across marketplaces across the world that we actually can gain some specific insights that other people don't have, just like simply don't have. So for example, if you're trying to sell something, we can tell you that your competitive set is going to be that they've got these keywords, right, that they're bidding on, or hey, like the top seller in your category has these words in their bullet points, or they don't have these words in those bullet points, or these pictures, for example, match this type of, this type of archetype. Like, so just information for you about what is selling, what's not selling, how your competitors are what they are doing, and what seems to be working. And it allows you to be able to adjust your content dynamically to be able to match in some scenarios, or you're like, hey, you're winning here, nobody else is saying this, keep doing that thing, right? So it really allows you both the tactical management of being able to push up, and then the strategic parts of optimizing that content all in one package. That's the intent.
So what separates good product content from just average run-of-the-mill content?
I think it's hard to give a singular answer to that, because it is dynamic. Because like if you were to ask me that exact same question, just choose any category. Let's just say, I mean, we talk about Zesty Paws, right? So like, let's say in the pet world, right? Like content a year ago, what worked actually might not be what works today because of whatever, right? Like Zesty Paws made something that like now is orange packaging, and now everybody else is doing orange packaging. I think the best content is dynamic and understands how, and you can understand how trends are changing right now. So like that, it needs to be clean. It obviously needs to be clean. It needs to be maximized. Like for videos, for example, it's increasingly important for people to put videos, because people watch videos. Another thing, for example, like the bullet points are important, but there's a bunch of data, ours and others out there, that say like, people look at the pictures, all of the pictures, before they read a single bullet point after the title, right? So
that's me. Yeah,
I'm the same way. I'm to the point where I don't read the bullet points at all, unless I'm looking for something very technical or specific, right? Where I'm like, oh, this is I just bought a charger, for example, not that long ago, and I needed to make sure it had the voltage that I needed, right? So like, then I look at the bullet points. But for the most part, I'm looking through the pictures on everything that I buy. So how do you make sure you're maximizing the pictures? That feels like that used to be a more novel, and now it's just like, you have to do that, right? Or otherwise you're not going to do it. And almost everybody's doing that now. So I guess my point here is, you've got to be able to understand you got to stay ahead of the trend. You got to stay up on what's going on. That's really challenging sometimes. And it's the most critical piece of managing the content. It's not set it or forget it. That just doesn't work anymore.
Well, the way that you're talking about like people tending to read bullet points and that being kind of something that's maybe a thing of the past. I mean, I suppose that's a bit of a larger trend in just the way that we interface with the internet now. Because if you think about, like, I don't know if you've ever been on it, when you can search like historical web pages. If you look at like news websites from 10, 15 years ago, everything tended to be righted. Or the same if you go on like eBay from 2007, for example, everything was righted. Whereas now, as you say, like it's pictures that people look at first. People now look at videos because they're so accustomed to social media and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and like that being the way that people absorb content now. So it just makes sense for e-commerce to follow that same trend as well, because that's kind of the cultural zeitgeist of the way that everybody interfaces with the internet now.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It used to be, explanations and all of that, but then I think what's now interesting is as we move into the kind of like the world where AI has more of a hand in discovery, those bullet points are more about classification, right? What AI is extremely good at, we're getting better and better at content creation, right? Like fewer times where there's 6 fingers and 14 hands or whatever that might be, right? Like it is, we're getting to the world where content, the critical parts of content management, like how do you interact with both the words that are in your bullet points or in your, on your website, for example, in an FAQ is now digested through, an LLM, and that now is part of product discovery. And so the bullet points, it's not that stuff doesn't matter. It's about how do you get the eyeballs easier, faster, and the right eyeballs? So when they get there, they look at the pictures and videos, right? So like, it's just a different journey for a consumer than even a year or two ago. And you're right. Like it is just a totally different thing from even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
in the US is really different than Europe, and very different that, that a consumer in China is a completely different buying motion than a consumer in the US, right? So it's just the dynamic nature of the content, what consumers need, and how you interact with them is completely changed.
So in terms of like all of this data that people can now get through PXM, and being able to turn that into, actionable insights on the way that they can change their products or change their listings so that they can generate more sales, you guys can draw on like some wild number of data points. It's like 46 trillion with a T.
Yeah, I think that's probably an outdated. I think we add like billions every single week. So I think the public number out there is just over 47 trillion data points. But that's right. Yeah, it's a bunch of e-commerce data points from tons of marketplaces and millions and millions of products.
Well, I suppose the question is, like, with all of that data, surely there's loads of noise in it as well. So how do you turn all of that data into actionable insights for people?
I think it's a great question. So anytime that I'm building a solution or a piece of software, I kind of break it down. There's three pieces, right? There's data, there's insights, and then there's actions. And you've used like actionable insights, right? So the raw data is actually a pretty critical piece. How do we get that? How do we store it? How do we normalize it? How can we identify what we actually have? And then insights is a wide range. Insights could be information that you just need to know. What are your sales, for example, or are you in stock or out of stock? An insight should be, hey, here's what your forecast might be based on historical sales and information you have for forward-looking seasonality, right? Like so insights that you derive from that raw data, but that data, actually like housing that data, bringing in that data, classifying that data is something that we've got. It's actually one of the secret sauces of our success, really, right? Like it really is something that is a challenging problem. And that's where we've used bunch of data scientists. We've got this is where AI is really great. Once again, classifying information and being able to tag that information so we can then utilize it to generate an insight that is then actionable. So some of this is insight just for display. It's helping a brand know what wins and what's going on. But a lot of this ends up being, hey, I can make a change here, and giving recommendations to be able to say, hey, this is a change. And some of that is through AI, some of that's algorithmic, some of that's human beings. We actually don't believe that humans are not needed in this world, right? There's still stuff. It is like we augment human beings to be able to make great decisions, and we automate the things where we can remove those decision points. So I think when it boils down, it's how like that path from data to insights to actions. How do we identify what in the data set that is something we should act upon, and then make the best insight possible? And you're not going to be right. So it's an iterative process every single time, right? You're like, okay, I was not, do I have a high level of confidence that it will work? How do I try that thing? How do I learn from that thing and iterate on it in a more augmented or automated way? That's the secret sauce, right? Like it's all in that middle insights bucket. Actions it's hard for a company, a service, a software to do all three of those things. Very few of them do that. It's actually one of the reasons I think Pattern's been very successful is we actually do all three of those. We house the data, we generate the insights, and we do the actions on the behalf of the brand. And it is a pretty powerful combination. So, people that are in our entire ecosystem get a benefit from that. But to your initial question, how do we surface that? It's all in that middle bucket. How do we derive insights that we know, hey, you should act on this, or this is just something to know? But the raw the base data, what you feed into that AI models, what you feed into the machine is going to be the most critical piece. So if we don't nail the data, then we can't make any insights that are actually actionable. And that is something that is, I think, extremely differentiated within the patterns.
Yeah, 100%. Have you, when you were talking about all of that then, I was just thinking about, have you got any that come to mind immediately where you can think of, some insights that you provided to a brand that maybe then made them course correct or made them change direction, change strategy? Any particular ones that stand out to you?
Yeah, I think, this happens within, there's, if I kind of break it down, maybe like two quick examples, like one on the side and one's on the move stuff side. One of the things on the sell stuff side is content related. some brands really want to have a brand identity where they're like, I have an opinion about X. And one of the fun things about being data-driven is it's sometimes difficult with brands that they feel so strongly sometimes about the thing that they've built. There's a lot of emotion around that. So using data to actually drive the decisions, then you're like, look, I understand you either want to position it that way, or you don't want those words, in your title, or you don't want those words in your content. But the reality is that drives, that is what's winning in the category. That is what customers are looking for. That's what consumers want to see and to understand associated with the product. And you have a decision. You can either stick to your guns and sell fewer things, or you can make the change that the data tells us to and sell more things. And I think that's actually not just happens sometimes. That's a constant thing. And, for us, that's what true partnership actually is. Partnership is not you tell me what to do and I do it. True partnership is me sitting across the table from you and saying, hey, we've got a decision to make as a team here. Here's what our data tells us. What should we do? And so many brands have to go up against that, like what the data tells us and the collision of what they think their brand is in market. The reality is you kind of don't get to dictate what customers think about your product, right? They get to decide and they get to be where they want to be. So you have to meet them where they are. So that is something that happens all the time. On kind of moving on the logistics side, a lot of people want to optimize for the wrong things in the logistics space because it's super complicated, very confusing, and kind of unsexy at the same time, but super critical. So people are like, hey, I want to have a lot of stock, for example, but what ends up happening within the Amazon ecosystem is stuff expires and it gets into the wrong place and you don't end up sending things into the right areas of the US, for example, or in Europe. How do you think about filling the right areas in the right countries? Are you part of PanEU or you're not? Using data to be actually this is the right weeks of supply, for example, is a constant conversation we have with people because they're like, if I don't have 12 weeks of supply, then my sales go down. And the reality is that's not true. So using data to drive those and being able to work with brands that actually smaller, more frequent shipments, for example, have a dramatic improvement over large, once a month shipments, because that's not how Amazon's flow system works in any part of the world. So those using the data to drive on both sides of the coin is I think really where we differentiate from some of within our peer set.
Yeah, I get that, and I think that it's probably, I'm sure you, the sales team, your consultants, whatever you decide to call them, will come up against that time and time again, where you try speaking to somebody and it's their e-commerce brand, it's maybe their form of revenue, it's their baby, right? So it's really difficult to get them to change the way that they look at it, or maybe they really don't want to put a certain keyword in it, or maybe they really don't want to have an image in that way that you guys are suggesting that it should be, because they probably think that they know it better than you, which, yeah, you're nodding. This comes up all the time. Sometimes I guess
the brand knows better sometimes, right? And the reality is that's what that actual partnership is. Our data says X and the brand says Y. That's where it's okay, but I think the key is if you can try things and you can test those things and you listen to the brand and you bring that to the table. We're not just that's where the partnership is really critical to us. We're not just going to go do things. We're not going to price things in a certain way because we blah 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 blah. It is, we do want to make sure that we are keeping the integrity of the brand and helping them figure out how the brand interacts with the marketplace. Not being, we're not a hammer. And so I think it's really critical that we can be not forceful. We can be, regimented in the way that we are thinking about presenting the data, but it is their baby, right? It is their brand at the end of the day. And so finding them and meeting them where they are, and that might not happen the first time. Maybe it takes 6 months before we build some trust up there, but that's part of the game.
Okay, so if you could only track 3 key metrics of somebody's general e-commerce account health, what would they be? Quick fire question, this one.
Okay, 3 metrics. So I think that I would do your in-stock rate.
Okay.
For sure. I would look at your reviews, both how many and what they're at, because it drives so much of the effectiveness of selling that product.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is I would look at the percentage of page views that are same day and next day delivery. That is another really key piece of what drives conversion. So we see a dramatic increase, for example, between like 2-day delivery and next day delivery and same day delivery. Each one of those has a dramatic step in increasing conversion and ad effectiveness as you are in the network. So those are 3 that come to mind right away.
Okay, nice.
In stock is important because you can have the best product in the world. You can have the best marketing, you can have the best content, you can have the best whatever, and if it can't be purchased, then it literally doesn't matter. So like that, if availability matters a ton.
Yeah, 100%. And when you were talking about the same day, next day delivery, that's one of the key things that I personally come up against all the time, because when we're talking to people about international expansion and where they should look at getting VAT numbers next, I think a lot of people sort of gloss over how important Prime eligibility is. And, within Europe, if you're a German company or you're currently established in Germany, you're then not really thinking about how many sales you're potentially missing out on by not having Prime in France, by not having that VAT number in France. And obviously the way that Amazon's algorithm is tailored, it's going to bring you up higher on the search if you are Prime eligible and things of that nature as well. So it's kind of hard to quantify, because you physically don't know what you're missing out on until you then step into that arena.
Yeah, it is so impactful just to have Prime in general, right? So it's like there's actually public numbers out there. I think we've actually published some stuff like between 40 and 50% increase between not Prime and Prime. And then you do see a conversion lift and an increase between even like 2-day, next day, and same day. But Amazon's algorithm is designed to do one thing: to sell more stuff. Like, that's it. So they are going to present in front of a consumer the thing that is most likely to sell. They don't care about your opinions and your desires as a seller. Like they just don't care about fairness. They want one thing. They want a conversion on a sale that happens when somebody types something in or they look at something, right? So like they're designed for one singular purpose, and they find that the Prime tag has such a dramatic increase on conversion. It's so incredibly critical.
Yeah, right. And on that same topic, what do you think are some of the main issues that maybe brands overlook when they are first looking to go international?
I think it's the different consumer. So 2 pieces, right? The different type of consumer experience internationally, because like international is not created equal. And this is the thing, like we're in the US, everybody's like us, right? We're in the US, we're the best. They want to be us. Super false, obviously. And every consumer is different across the world, right? Like a consumer in London is going to want something different. For, many countries on the world, this really well. Like a ton of countries on the world actually want, if it's like a consumable product, they actually want local products. And so like the environment around, for example, Australia for supplements or like anything that is ingestible, like they're super, super tight about importing those kind of things in bulk, right? Like that is something that you're like, hey, I sell really well in the US. I'll probably like Australia, they speak English. It'll be easiest to go there. And the reality is like the regulations and the requirements for getting stuff in are so much more complex, and the consumer is really, really different. And so as you think about each of those areas, brands just, I think, don't take enough time to understand the compliance requirements, obviously, and all the supply chain required to do that thing, both incredibly important, but the fact that just the consumer is dramatically different in that area. So like China, for example, something like 82% of all consumer transactions, they talk to a customer service person before the purchase.
Wow.
Which is insane. I don't even like talking to you. I don't want to talk to anybody, right? Like, before I buy a thing, like, I don't, and think in the US, I think Europe is similar that way. Like, there's just the customer service interactions are so low to, as a percentage of total purchases, but that's a totally different consumer interaction. You need to be able to do that operationally before you launch into that. And so there's a big tax of being able to figure that out. So understanding the consumer, understanding compliance, and understanding the supply chain required to support it I think those are three big ones that brands regularly overlook.
Yeah, that's really interesting about the China thing. That's super interesting because I always think that one of the main reasons that Uber became as successful as what it did, and obviously the fact that you can just call a ride whenever is really helpful, but I think a lot of it is because people don't like picking the phone up and calling a taxi company. They would much rather just go, I'm here, give me a car. Like, people don't want to phone people anymore. So to then have that buying experience be so different over in China, it's something that you and I probably can't even relate to at all because, like you said, even getting on a podcast like this, you think, what am I going to say? How am I going to operate? How am I going to come across? So to then be asking questions to somebody before you buy any product is wild.
Yeah, I think through chat and text and phone, it's just a totally different buying experience. It's just something that you don't think about. So the consumers are not the same. So I think it's a common mistake that they're like, hey, whatever I've learned here, I can replicate in other areas. And it's very much not that simple, right? It's a super different environment. And brands generally have to have help to navigate that, right? You can't just go figure it out. It's so expensive to get wrong.
Well, let's bring it back to Pattern again. So obviously we've been talking a little bit about international expansion. How is it that you guys help alleviate some of the friction of a brand that is going global?
Yeah, I think that if you think about, those three pieces, right? So they need help navigating some of the compliance and some of the requirements there, which I think we make easier in some scenarios. They either give knowledge or we help kind of navigate through what that looks like. I think another piece is the supply chain. We are a global supply chain. We're a broker. We can get things from anywhere to anywhere. The supply chain's super hard, very complex. We help navigate that and make that super easy for brands. And we talked about PXM. We talked about the content and the compliance with each of these marketplaces. And we make that super simple. That's actually what brands generally, they're like, I don't even know what I should do or how to interact with that marketplace. And we're already there, right? We've got local teams in all these areas. We've got connections already pre-built. We've got, it's hard to go international. I think you know this super, super well, right? It is so challenging to do, moving outside of wherever you are. And that goes both directions. You could be a really strong seller in the UK and you try to go to the US. It's not just all US out. You could be a really strong Chinese seller and in the US and it's not the same in Europe or whatever that might be. It is hard to be able to navigate all those individual pieces. And I think the reality is all those are operational problems. The Pattern, we try to be the easy button. I've used that phrase before here. Just give us the inventory and then we take care of the rest from an operational side. And then we work with you and partner with you on strategy. So it's like having an international arm of your own company. That's kind of what we try to be.
Well, from the operational side, you mentioned a little bit earlier on that you are using robotics and automation, but then you also said that you still have the human touch as well. So where within the whole process for you guys have you intentionally automated and which parts still value that human touch and where is that still integral?
Yeah, I think you've got kind of three different, there's probably four. I don't know, I'm doing this live, but I think there's probably four different things here, right? There's one that is always going to be a human. Relationships, picking up the phone and talking to somebody about their strategy, what's going on. So much of our business in the services world is still going to be human to human, right? So that can't be automated. We don't want to augment that. We don't want to, that still we believe is a critical piece of, this world. Then you've got things that you can augment. You can say, hey, this human still needs to do it, but I can remove a lot of the decision points. I can give them insights on how to make a great decision, but they still have to push the button. They still have to do the thing. Then you've got on this side of the scale, you're more toward automation, but it's I still need a person to give me some type of input. Forecasting, for example. Forecasting is really hard. Forecasts are wrong every single time. That's the only thing that's true about forecasts. Every single time. It's about how close you can get, how fast you can recover, right? So let's take forecasting as a good example where I can do a bunch of hard work, data science. We've got multiple data scientists on our team chasing how to create great forecasts across marketplaces in the world all of the time. We're iterating on it. It's a super hard problem to solve. We've gotten really good at it and it's still really, really hard and we have a lot to work on still. But that's one where, like, I don't know if you're going to increase your ad budget 3x. Like, I can't use an algorithm to identify that that's true. I can know that your product is seasonal, but I don't know that, you have a new product that you're going to launch and it competes with a different product set. Like, there's these things that require human input, and then I can use the math that I've already built to help automate, right? So I can do 90% of it with automation, but I still need a human input to tell me what I don't know about the future. I'm great at reading the past. I need you to help me with the future. So forecasting is a great example of, like, it is firmly and shall be ever more probably the ability for, like, humans to be heavily augmented with technology. And that's how we attack that problem. And then you've got this full automation. No decision point, no human being needs to do that thing. And over time, we push a lot of the operational tasks toward as much automation as we can. But we don't shy away from the two middle ones where they're fully, like, where we can augment. It's like, can we make it a little more augmented? Can we go from 91% of the decisions to 92% of the decisions? Do that, right? Like, help the person make a better call. But we don't actually shy away from that. I think that's part of the power of the industry that we're in today.
Nice. Where do you think the automation improves, the accuracy, the speed, or bottom line, just the sales of a business? What part is automation, like, key within all of that?
I think that, if you talk about, like, the hot button words or, like, AI, right? Like, we use AI as a tool across many pieces of our business, from logistics and fulfillment all the way through content management. And I think the technology helps with the quick iteration. Like, when you are, like, for content, for example, one of the things that we do is, like, we're trying to make sure that what you think is on the front end of the marketplace is actually on the marketplace. Like, doing that in mass and being able to identify, hey, there's actually a difference between what you think is on Amazon when you search for that product actually there. That's a practical example that technology helps a lot, right? So we're looking at those two things. We're looking for differences, and then we're re-pushing up information automatically to say, hey, let's try to publish that again so we get what we want on the front page. Like, you cannot do that at scale in a company. You just can't do that, right? Like, if you've got 200 SKUs every single day, every single hour, it's really impossible to do that process. And you have to be able to have something that can be the driver there. So when the world of AI, where we have more interesting and new generative capabilities, we also have the ability to categorize information, to set up things to search, and to just be faster at identifying things that need to be corrected, and then actually what you should correct it with. So I think speed is the right word there. It's not that you couldn't have done those things in the past. It's that you have the ability to identify those in a more automated way that helps the human being be more effective, or eliminate the required of a human touch when we already know the answer and we have a high confidence that action needs to happen. So I think that without that technology focus for brands, those that aren't in that world and be able to do that are going to fall behind, because those of us that are built in that world are going to run so much faster than anybody else.
Sure. And I think as well, like, obviously it's quite difficult for people to know where to go now, because as you were saying earlier on, Amazon is this huge behemoth that, in the US is everywhere. Europe, some of the main countries, UK, it's still the number one platform. Germany, France, still really big, but less so. And then, other countries like Poland, Czech Republic, it's kind of like a second or even tertiary platform for people that are using e-commerce in general. But, now you've got all of these other big players that are on the market as well. You mentioned Walmart earlier. We were talking a little bit about TikTok. So do you give people insights on what platforms they should potentially use next and how to optimize them?
Yeah, we have so many insights about the competitive set, right? We can be like, your competitors are on Walmart. Your competitors are doing this on Walmart. This is what they've positioned on Walmart versus on Amazon, right? Like, there's so many insights around how you interact with your consumer there. Or TikTok. Not every product and not every brand is built for TikTok, for example, but there's tons of brands where it does really well. So I think that there's kind of two ways that we help brands here. It's one, it's identification. To your point, should you be on Walmart? Should you not be on Walmart? Should you be in China? Should you not be in China? Should you be in UK? Should you not? Whatever that would be, right? Or in Europe. The the second part of that is how easy is it to test and try? So for example, for TikTok Shop, if we're like, you should be on TikTok Shop and they don't have the fulfillment capabilities, they don't have the influencers, like we can help with those things, right? So we've got a 3PL where we do fulfillment, right? So we do D2C fulfillment for Shopify or TikTok Shop or even Amazon FBM. We ship things in under other people's seller accounts, for example, on Amazon, and they ride the rails of our transportation. So we not only identify you should be here, but then we are, again, I use the phrase easy button again, we're the easiest way to test and to try something. And then if it doesn't work, cool, throw it, either iterate or remake that decision. But we talk with brands all the time about where they should and shouldn't be, and then try to reduce the friction of trying it on that marketplace.
Are there any of these emerging channels that are really exciting you right now?
I mean, I think it's hard to ignore TikTok Shop. I think that not only because it's grown so fast, but it is such a different buying experience. And I don't even, can I be honest with you? Just between you and me, don't tell anyone. I don't even have TikTok. It's just a thing that I don't do that, right?
Well, nor do I.
I'm not cool enough, right? Right. But the reality is there's so many people that are buying. Actually, it's not all young kids, right? A huge percentage of buyers on TikTok Shop are actually are people older than me, right? They're an older generation. So how do you figure out, it's hard to ignore TikTok Shop as being something that's super interesting as we figure out how much of the US consumer wants that. It could be, again, the consumer is so different. In China, maybe this is a huge percentage of the way that people want to buy things. In the US, I don't know how much adoption will come that way. It'll definitely be more than zero. And I think there's tons of room to run in the social selling world. And I think TikTok Shop is obviously very uniquely positioned to be a big player in the way that people buy things. I don't know if it's all the products, it's all the selection, but certainly a new way to buy in the last few years versus the traditional either e-commerce or retail space. You can't ignore that one. If your brand should be there, you have to run fast. Other people are.
I think it's interesting as well because sort of drawing on what you were talking about earlier with the way that Chinese people will tend to interact with the seller before they buy a product. If you think about the way that TikTok Shop operates, even from a top level way of looking at it, if you go to Amazon, you usually know what you're going to buy. So for example, today I had some new toothbrush heads that arrived. I went onto Amazon. I know I can get replacement toothbrush heads for my electric toothbrush. That's what I got them for. I went off Amazon as soon as I'd purchased it. So I went on there with a definitive product in mind. I purchased it and then I left. Whereas if you think about TikTok Shop, you'd just be scrolling TikTok. You might see a video that maybe catches your attention, and then it's kind of like a surprise buy. Something comes up and you go, oh, actually, that would actually fit within my life. Or I've never thought about that before, but that would actually work for me. And I think as well, Temu is really interesting in that same in that same vein. I don't know if you've been on Temu, but
yeah,
you have.
Yep.
It's the whole idea of playing. They're almost like slot machine games. I don't know what you guys call them. Is it VLTs? Yeah, VLTs. It's like you go on there and you press a button and then something spins around and it says, hey, you've got $200 worth of coupons, but you've got to spend $195 before you can activate them or something like that. But it's a completely different way of interfacing with shopping in general.
It's so much they've gamified the entire experience. It's a very different type of thing. The question is how many consumers want that kind of thing? It's interesting. Is it actually going to be impactful? And you talk about discovery for products is totally different. Let me tell you what, I'm a single dude. I don't cook a lot. I just don't find any joy in it. When I'm done cooking, I think that took a long time and it takes me 42 seconds to eat that thing. I just don't get enjoyment from it. The other day I was on Instagram and I bought a $400 air fryer at 2 a.m. And it got there and I was ashamed. I was I'm not going to use this. I'm not going to use this. I don't want an air fryer. I didn't go searching for an air fryer. I don't know why the algorithm was this guy totally wants an air fryer. I don't know what it was, But I bought the air fryer because I was like, I'm hungry. That food looks fantastic. You are right. Like I wasn't there for a purpose. I was like looking at, what my cousin was doing probably or something like that. And then I was like, all of a sudden bombarded with an air fryer that I ended up buying. It's a completely different purchase experience. And I think it's hard to ignore that as a different level of discovery than what we're used to.
But at the end of the day, I mean, the seller wanted the sale. The algorithm tailored it to you. You bought it. So you might not have wanted it in the end, but, the whole process worked seamlessly.
That worked. It was like, this person's likely to buy my thing. And I did. I have it. It's like, I don't know if I'll use it a ton, but like it's an air fryer.
Cool, it's easy. You just put the stuff in, press a button, leave it for 20 minutes, come back, the food's ready. You don't have to get DoorDash ever again.
I just get no enjoyment from making food. I'm really good at making pizza, frozen pizza. So.
All right, cool. Well, let's bring it back to pattern again, because I've in the back of my mind, like even when we first got on this podcast together on this call, obviously a lot has changed for you guys this year specifically.
Yep.
Congratulations on the IPO. But
thanks.
Well, I don't even know how to really word this, but like, what changes for you guys now that you are public? Do you feel this like overwhelming loom of like, oh, now we're beholden to shareholders? Like, how does that impact decision making day to day?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, you spend a lot of time. I mean, this is not like an overnight process, right? This takes a very long time. It's about a year for us through this process, and a lot of it's very secretive because you can't tell anybody, and so you're going through this process where I think as like a leadership team, we're preparing ourselves to lead our teams through a rather important time in the company's, like maybe the most important time in the company's history.
Yeah.
But it's just a moment. It really is. Like, the thing that got us here is that we just try to build a really good business. We try to have a high level of ability to affect positive outcomes for our brands. Like, those things don't change. It's disingenuous to say that things won't change in a public company. Every single time they're going to. So it's a question for us as a team. How long can we wait to make changes, and how minor can those changes be? How do we make sure that we're still just trying to build value for the company? I mean, we have a lot of, as a company, as our founders, we've got a lot of decision making still in the way that we went public. We didn't go public because we struggled and needed money, for example. Like, we went for a lot of other good reasons. And so I think for us, it doesn't feel overwhelming to me. I think the thing that made us a good business so far is going to continue to be the truth. And so it's, how do we make sure we don't get distracted with, we're operating in quarters, and instead, let's just add value and let's think long term. And the good news is we're not, we're in a good financial position. We've built a good foundational business. And if we can keep doing that and keep executing on that, that wins us the ability to not play defense and to stay on offense. And that's, I think, our major goal.
Okay. Off topic a little bit, but what's Wall Street actually like?
There's a lot, the whole process of when they say people that have money make more money, it's a thing. It's a real thing. It's very hard. It's super difficult to manage, expectations, and being a private company, being a public company, the way that you are scrutinized, what's out there in the public. One of the big things that changed, I can't talk about the future, right? I can't talk about what we're planning to do or what to expect to do, or I can only talk about things that are public, that are out there. Because, they threw Martha Stewart in jail for insider trading. They would do it to me, right? Those kind of things you have to be careful about. That's a change in the way that I interact with, I speak on podcasts, and, if I'm talking to people that are out there, I have to be a little more intentional about what I'm talking about. But the foundational piece of how we interact with Wall Street, I think if we're doing it right, we are focused on building enterprise value, or we're focused on being a good executional company. But we did have to go play the game, right? To go public, you can't just do it on your own. It's so many banks and lawyers involved and investors. and it's quite the experience. But a lot of people worked really hard on getting us there, and now our main focus is how do we make sure that we don't overpromise, we don't underpromise, and we can go deliver on what we say we'll do.
Nice. Well, as I say, congrats on that. It's a huge achievement, and I can't even imagine the countless hours that there's been board meetings and people who've probably broke down about all of this. So to actually get there and to see it through is tremendous. So no, hats off.
Thanks. It was definitely a process. It is not designed to be easy in any way. So agreed.
So seeing as we can't talk about the future, and I can't ask you what's next for Pattern because that might be insider trading, let's go instead to a hypothetical past. And to be honest, I'm going to start to wrap this up, but this is always one thing that we usually like to end on. So the question is, if you had to start from Friday this week, and you start from dead zero, no company, nothing, and you had to get yourself back on your feet, and you're starting over again, what would you do differently? And I suppose on the more optimistic side, what would you double down on and do the same?
It's a good question. I think the things that are important, I think one of the things that Pattern did really well is that we focused on, like, we are a middleman. Like, we are not a manufacturer of a brand, right? Like, we don't have our own brands. We don't chase our own like brand image and products, for example, right? And I think in many ways, I think one of the things that Pattern did really well, and I would do again absolutely, is we are an intentionally, like, you can look at our information, right? Like, Q1, Q2 of this year, historically, we're a low margin business. We are a middleman. We want to be the best middleman in the world. We want to be incremental. We want to be, for a brand, we want to be helpful and help them accelerate. But I think one of the key pieces, and one of the reasons I joined the Pattern team, and like Dave, our CEO, one of the selling pitches for me was like, we're not going to be a 30% margin business. Like, think about the really big companies in the world, the Amazons, the Walmarts, the Costcos, those really, really big brands that have been in the retail space are not necessarily one singular brand. And so being that low margin, high volume, high capabilities, thing is the right call for in our space. And I think I would do that 100 times out of 100. So like, that's the thing I definitely would do exactly the same. The thing I would do different is probably, there's been a big transition as we've gone international, right? Like, I think that there are times where I think we have we've pushed on people that are really smart people, but less experienced, like they don't have experience out in the world. And I think in a startup world where you're going really fast, you're like, hey, Billy over here is really, really smart. He did great in this role. Let's see if he can go chase Europe. And sometimes Billy is really good at that thing, and like experience wins. And I think earlier on in like our time, we could have done a better job, I think, of like getting external talent in ways that we didn't have internal expertise. And I think sometimes it slowed us down doing that and like trying to figure it out on our own. We paid some dumb tax, because what I call that, right? So like, get an expert in, focus on the expert, find a partner that's an expert in that world. So there's always this balance between building and buying, and like even internally with your own talent, you have that same internal decision. I think we miss the mark sometimes on that, but I think the basic core principles what drive our business are the right ones, right? Partner obsession, being super data driven, like those things, they carry legs, or they have legs for a long time. And I think that would be something I wouldn't change at all, 0%.
I think it's insightful knowing that like there's so much money to be made by just being that middleman and just taking small margins off, hundreds of thousands, millions, billions of transactions.
Right.
Which is, when you mentioned that, there was a couple of different examples that came to mind. I mean, even if you think about Amazon, right? Amazon facilitates probably more sales than any other platform in the world, but yet they don't own any stock. And if you think about Airbnb, right? Most people are renting properties through Airbnb, but Airbnb don't own any houses. And the same like Uber, right? You can go and get taxi rides with Uber, but Uber don't own any cars. So these middlemen are often the ones which are some of the most successful businesses. But
yeah, well, I mean, Amazon does own inventory in some ways, right? But less and less and less over time. Like they have the 1P model where they're buying inventory, but the growth is happening on the e-commerce platform on the other side, right? Like to your point, the growth is happening over on the 3P side where they're a platform where they're connecting buyers and sellers. And so that's exactly right. I think that there's more and more opportunity that exists for connecting people and products. Like it's just that discovery is completely changing. It's going to continue to morph. And there's a lot. I mean, we're, if you do the trailing 12 months, right, from what was public, like it's just over $2 billion. Like the e-commerce marketplace is trillions of dollars just on the marketplaces side of the retail equation here. So like there's so much opportunity for lots of winners in this space, and lots of brands need help to navigate that. So yeah, being a middleman, it's pretty lucrative if you can do it the right way. It's hard to do right, but I think we've done a lot of it right.
Nice. Well, Rob, thank you so much for coming on. And personally, I couldn't think of a better place to end it than just there. But before we do wrap up, where can people reach out to you? What should they be reaching out to you for?
Sure.
And again, I can't ask what's next for Pattern. So
yeah, I just can't give specifics about like numbers. I think what's next for Pattern, I'll kind of answer that one first, is we're not foundationally changing like the core business model that we have, right? We're going to continue to partner with brands. We're going to continue to be a global unlock for lots of brands and marketplaces around the world. We're going to continue to invest in international and off. Like we're heavy Amazon, right? And that's actually not. I don't find that as a defect at all. We're a marketplace enabler, right? And Amazon's the big one in the US is where we started. We're going to continue to look for opportunities to grow outside of Amazon in the US and then also on other platforms around the world to make it easier for brands to be able to reach consumers where those consumers are. So like we're going to continue to do more and more. We're going to leverage technology. We're going to be AI focused on using like as a tool to solve lots of big problems. It's not going to change, right? So we'll continue to expand well beyond Amazon while we're continue to try to kick ass on Amazon, right? Like, so I don't think that'll change in any way. To reach us, I mean, we've got a bunch of different ways that we work with brands, right? So we've got SaaS products like PXM where, you can sign up. We've got logistics and fulfillment ranging from reimbursements on seller accounts to reverse logistics, direct-to-consumer fulfillment. We've got transportation solutions both into marketplaces and then from your manufacturer, co-packer, whatever that would be, around the world from anywhere to anywhere. Go into pattern.com and take a look at the options that we've got, or you can reach out to somebody on our team who can help direct you and kind of talk through the different solutions that we've got, ranging from the fulfillment solutions all the way through kind of what we call our core model, which is where we buy and sell inventory and unlock that marketplace growth across the world. So great place to start is Pattern. Also for me personally, reach out on LinkedIn. I'm usually pretty decent at connecting with people and getting people connected on our team. Rob Hahn on LinkedIn or Pattern. Contact us. Those are two ways. We have people that are really good at getting back really fast and understanding if it's a good fit.
Nice, man. Well, yeah, like I said, I don't know what else to say, really. I mean, you summed it up so succinctly, so let's park it there. But as I said, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. And it's been Rob Hahn, everybody.
Thank you very much.
In the next one.